about the creek through here?
Well, this is about 200 to 250 feet wide. It's not a roadway alignment.
It's
We would
right
be
on the creek.
Basically, we would be on this side
Of the creek. And it follows the creek to this point?
Right, and then it could either continue down here. So you can see the creek. See the creek going this way?
Okay, I see it. So one alternative would be to stay on the west side, is it north up? I think, to stay on the west side of the creek and then tie into the railroad track.
Right.
So that's one. Where's the sewage treatment plant? Okay, sewage treatment plant right there. So I call this as sort of the river sewage treatment plant railroad. And I guess they'd abandon this railroad, obviously.
Well, or you would be on
one side or the other?
Yes.
Okay. So you could still have the road and it could be an interchange here if you get your mile or half interchange or something.
Right. But like I said, and that decision point is, we're looking probably February-ish or so, being able to go back to MoDOT and FHWA with the traffic study to be able to, so that they can kind of look at the numbers to see, do we want to keep talking about this or not? Does this make any sense? Or can the existing interchanges handle the traffic and should we just stick with those? Would be the thought process.
Okay, this alignment is Route A.
Correct.
And it's kind of I call by the Walmart.
Yes.
This kind of swampy back in here.
Correct.
But that kind of intersects the, what I call next to the sewage treatment plant. So this alternative would come here. Now, what are the pros and cons of, I call it river alignment versus the high ground alignment? What would be good about this? What would be good about that?
Well, both are will be costly because you're talking about either going on structure above the railroad, or even going under. You can't go under where it is existing because that's too low. So basically, you have to raise the BNSF, and because you need to raise that, that roadway, or you need to, basically keep the water on because you can't have a roadway to a port that's not, at the 100-year flood level.
Yeah, you'd be in a hole here.
Would they have to be as high as the levee?
Just about, yeah. So, because if you think of where the levee cuts across here on the site where the railroad tracks are, you'd be filling all that up, to get up to that level here. The difficulty with going over the railroad is where you're going to land, because another gentleman brought up, with trucks you have to have a certain grade, and you can't just pop over the railroad and drop back down. You've got to and so you've got to have the room, and so there's some potential interference with how you want this loop track.
Newport News, you mentioned. Newport News was this geometry, as I recall.
That's correct. That's what was brought up.
So this, to me, and I'm just asking, this would be simpler in terms of building it. Because you're kind of fighting the lowland and fighting underwater here, so wouldn't this be a preferred?
The challenge is where you touch down, but yes.
I mean, couldn't you just kind of cut over like this more? I mean, it just.
I think if I'm not mistaken, talking to the other engineers that were looking at the plan and profile, I think this was a lower spot of the BNSF, and so that's why they were kind of looking at coming over this way. Not to say when they really start looking at alignments, they wouldn't scoot this one way or the other, obviously. Right. But the main theory being the thought of over versus under.
Right. This under looks to me like a real problem.
Yes.
I just know.
No, you're right.
I fished in this area, and that's a fishing hole. And you get below the railroad tracks, you're in the rock and water.
Yes, you are.
Okay, now let me just ask about what. I'm trying to understand the options here.
Okay.
I know there's a park right here, I think it is. I guess one option would be this and then circle to Route A, I guess. Would this be, somebody would say, gee, this is shorter to do this than to do all this.
Yes. Absolutely.
But people here wouldn't be that happy with all the traffic. This is sort of in the middle of nowhere. I guess it looks like it's...
So on the backside of the airport, there's that, plastics?
West side.
Okay. So does the airport really go over here?
This is as far as the potential expansion. You can see the existing runway actually goes from here to here. That's the potential expansion, and this is goes all the way out what they call the protection zone area too. So it's the overall footprint. So you can have a roadway out there. You have to worry about the height of your lighting and all that kind of stuff.
You can't have your lights and like 7% slope path and all that.
So coming out this far was to kind of stay back out of those areas with the potential expansion of the airport, and respecting that particular development, and then coming and being able to tie back in here.
This is interesting. What's your feeling about this connection?
Well,
what is that now?
That's St. Pius.
Oh,
right
I see.
Here,
this is
where the trucks already kind of come in and out a lot already.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's part of the theory, is if you could improve that area and you already have trucks going in and out of it already. That could be. I drove that though. It's not a normal place to be able to see trucks going in and out on a road like this, but. So that would be one theory, because it gets you to 61, 67.
Right,
You could use existing
right.
interchanges to do that.
Than this Now, what would be the pros and cons of this alignment versus this alignment?
Well,
I mean, this is the railroad tracks and then the river by the sewage treatment plant.
Well, you have multiple creek crossings with this, and bridges are always a lot more.
You'd be crossing
a couple times, because you've got a creek. You're crossing the creek here. You're crossing the creek back here. That's a lot of structure, and that's expensive.
Right.
And so I wouldn't say that that's the most ideal situation.
It just seems like this railroad. I mean, I'm just tell me where I'm. It seems like this railroad track, and then kind of following the levee by the sewage treatment plant, and then up here. I mean, the only problem is it has an adverse geometry effect. I mean, that to me, this seems the simplest, and it'd be nice to have that connection too. But
that's a long way.
That's a long way. But
the nice part about this is that you pick up these other routes and just drive and airport
right.
road, and
yeah.
And so that's some of that community circulation. Emergency vehicle access, to some of the areas, additional access to the interstate,
This, you got multiple bridges, you're kind of ripping through the hills.
Correct.
The topography,
you're right.
I mean, if I'm looking at Mound Street correctly.
I don't know how they do it if it's not on the levee.
Where's Mound? This is Mound,
We'd have to be adjacent to the levee. You're talking about the road? Yeah.
Where I look at
then you come across that.
Well, and it's just because it's like about 200 feet wide. It just basically would be in that area. The engineers haven't designed to, but ideally be on the dry side, not on the wet side. But I mean, that's something that they would have to look at. But yeah, you're right. You'd really want to be on the dry side.
I'm familiar with this cul-de-sac. I mean, this drops 200 feet to the river.
Yes.
And basically, what I see here is sort of something along the river where this drops. I'm trying to imagine how that would be notched in.
You're gonna basically you'd have to fill that in, And so some of these areas, one of the guys that was just looking at some of the general layouts, if you had to fill it and then drop back with embankments, you're talking sometimes about 250 feet. For a three-lane facility with shoulders.
Right here.
So really, this really looks the simplest. But as you go this direction, you're kind of two bridges.
Right.
I mean, quite honestly, I know how you have to come up with two alternatives whenever you go to MoDOT, or three alternatives.
Right,
at least. Mm-hmm. So isn't this really kind of an alternative? It just seems that this is so much simpler.
Right.
And this is really two bridge crossings.
And to keep that road out of the water, that's just a lot of work and a very invasive.
Yeah. And the only thing that would really, what about the thought about going like this? What would be this to me seems simple. This and this both seem pretty simple.
Basically the main thing, and again too, going through this property, it wouldn't necessarily. I know we talked to the folks that have have plans for potential development in this area, and there is a willingness to talk about where this could be through that site.
This would be the floodplain. Mm-hmm. So how would you build that in?
So basically, you'd be comparing the impacts of and the cost of the floodplain area here versus the structure that you'd have to get this up over the BNSF and in there.
But you'd really have a problem getting under the bridge.
Yeah, you can't get under there where it is now.
Yeah.
Like I said, you'd have to raise the BNSF because you're going to have to get that road out of the water too, and plus you don't have the clearances.
So really, this isn't that feasible here. I mean, when you talk about raising a railroad grade, you're talking about raising something. I mean, you'd have to go back in here, and you have an elevated structure.
And the railroad's not the easiest people to work with.
You can't even get on the right of way.
If it's not to their advantage, there's really no reason to be speaking about it. So yes, even